Before a country moves toward conflict, there's one question that has to be answered clearly. Is there an imminent threat? Yes or no? This week, that question was asked, and it wasn't answered. This is Flashpoints, where we take the most important moments of the week, line them up, and look at what they actually reveal. And we're starting here because everything begins with the justification, the reason given for why anything moves forward at all. Listen carefully to this.
Is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated by last summer's airstrikes?
Yes.
And the opening statement you submitted to the committee last night also stated, quote, there has been no effort since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability, end quote, correct?
That's right.
And that's the assessment of the intelligence community.
Yes.
The White House stated on March 1st of this year that this war was launched and was, quote, a military campaign to eliminate the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, end quote. That's a statement from the White House. Quote, the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime. Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was an imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime?
The intelligence community assessed that Iran maintained the intention to rebuild and to continue to grow their nuclear enrichment capability.
Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
False. This is the worldwide threats hearing where you present to Congress national intelligence, timely, objective, and independent of political considerations. You've stated today that the intelligence community's assessment is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated and that, quote, there had been no efforts since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. Was it the intelligence community's assessment that nevertheless, despite this obliteration, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
It is not the intelligence community's responsibility to determine what is and is not an imminent threat.
Okay.
That is up to the president.
Here's the problem.
Based on a volume
no,
of information
it is precisely
that he receives.
It is precisely your responsibility to determine what constitutes a threat to the United States. This is the worldwide threats hearing where, as you noted in your opening testimony, quote, you represent the IC's assessment of threats. You are here to represent the IC's assessment of threats. That's a quote from your own opening statement. And so my question is, as you're here to present the IC's assessment of threats, was it the assessment of the intelligence community that, as the White House claimed on March 1st, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
Once again, Senator, the intelligence community has provided the inputs that make up this annual threat assessment.
You won't answer the question.
It is the nature of the imminent threat that the president has to make that determination based on a collection and volume of information and intelligence that he is provided with.
You're here to be timely, objective, and independent of political considerations.
Exactly what I'm doing.
No, you're evading a question because to provide a candid response to the committee would contradict a statement from the White House.
That wasn't a complicated question, and it should not have been a complicated answer. Is there an imminent threat? Yes or no? That's the baseline. That's the standard. Before a country moves toward conflict, before resources get committed, before lives are put on the line, that question has to be answered clearly. And instead of a direct answer, we get hesitation, we get deflection, we get uncertainty. Now, think about what that means. Because it isn't a press conference slip up, this isn't a minor detail. This is the entire justification. If there's an imminent threat, you say so. If there isn't, you say that too. But when you don't answer, you leave the public in the dark. You leave lawmakers guessing, and you create a situation where decisions can move forward without people fully understanding why, which is where we are right now. And that's where this becomes dangerous. Because history has shown when clarity is missing at the beginning, the consequences don't stay small. And what makes that even more concerning is what comes next.
I task with the task of seeing danger in time and acting on it. And I hope that in time, people will see the wisdom and the courage of President Trump's decision and his leadership, and the fact that we're working together. America is not fighting for Israel. America is fighting with Israel for a common goal, to protect our future, to protect civilization against these barbarians.
Not support, not coordination, not partnership in the traditional sense. Leadership. When a country is described as leading in a conflict, that carries a very specific meaning. Operational direction, strategic responsibility, and central involvement in whatever comes next. And historically, when the United States steps into that role, the scope expands, the timeline extends, and the expectations grow militarily, financially, and politically. So now we've moved from the unclear justification to a clearly defined escalation in roles. But it doesn't stop there. Watch this clip.
Literally, a single terrorist can put something in the water or shoot something or shoot a missile, a small missile, and it's fairly close range because it is a tight area, and which is one of the reasons they've always used that as a weapon. Iran has always used that as an economic weapon, and it's not going to be able to be used very long. Numerous countries have told me they're on the way. Some are very enthusiastic about it, and some aren't. Some are countries that we've helped for many, many years. We've protected them from horrible outside sources, and they weren't that enthusiastic. And the level of enthusiasm matters to me. We have some countries where we have 45,000 soldiers, great soldiers, protecting them from harm's way. And we have done a great job. And when we want to know, do you have any minesweepers? Well, we'd rather not get involved, sir. I said, for 40 years we're protecting you, and you don't want to get involved in something that is very minor. Very few shots going to be taken because they don't have many shots left. But they said, we'd rather not get involved. I just want the fake news media and everybody else to remember that was said, because I've been a big critic of all of the protecting of countries, because I know that we'll protect them, and if we ever needed help, they won't be there for us. I've just known that for a long period of time, just like I knew about the Strait, that it would be a weapon, which I predicted a long time ago.
Alliances like NATO were sold to us as a shield, collective defense, shared risk, mutual protection, not a one-way welfare system where America foots the bill. Trillions in spending, tens of thousands of troops stationed across Europe. Our blood spilled in their defense while they sit on the sidelines when the fire comes to our door. For decades, we've defended them. This is what Trump is saying. The Soviets against terror, against every threat. We've got bases in Germany, Italy, and UK. Our men and women guarding their borders so they can underfund their militaries and lecture us on multilateralism. But now in this war against Iran, the regimes that's been trying to wipe Israel off the map, build nukes, arm proxies to kill Americans, when we ask for help securing the Strait of Hormuz, according to Donald Trump, the artery that pumps 20% of the world's oil, crickets, refusals, excuses, not our fight. So when you hear the word betrayal, or worse, when he calls them cowards, that's not hyperbole. That's reality breaking through. NATO is a defense posture, not an offense posture. He says it signals the alliance is hollow. Commitments are paper thin. Article 5 might as well be optional when the bill comes due to Washington. And when coalitions collapse or refuse to show up, the burden doesn't vanish. It never does. It slams into America. Harder, lonelier, more expensive. More of our taxpayer dollars, billions more in munitions, carrier groups, air wings redeployed without allied cover. More exposure, our ships and pilots alone facing Iranian missiles, mines, swarms, single points of catastrophic failure because the supposed partners won't deploy their minesweepers. They're anything. More risk concentrated. One nation, ours, bearing dead, the wounded, the political blowback. The skyrocketing oil prices hitting every American family while Europe complains about the pump but won't lift a finger to fix the chokehold. Today, that picture is crystal clear according to Donald Trump. Unclear justification? No, our objectives are met. Iran's Navy sunk, Air Force gone, nuclear program gutted, but the strait stays closed because allies won't help. This is how Donald Trump sees it. This is how he's going to see it. Expanded American leadership forced unilaterally because no one else will step up. And the real danger, isolation by default. Not because we want it, but because allies are hedging, retreating, proving the alliance only works when it's convenient for them. But then, as I stated, NATO is a defense mechanism, not an aggressor. This is what Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand. They're not going to help because you started this war of choice. You started this war of choice. You didn't give us a justification for it, and you started a war of choice. Now we're in it on our own.
Last night, a stunning report in the Washington Post revealed that the Pentagon has reportedly discussed with the White House requesting $200 billion, $200 billion from Congress to bankroll Donald Trump's war with Iran. $200 billion so Donald Trump can go to war with Iran is preposterous, unacceptable. Even a fraction of that is unacceptable for a war without a plan, without a goal, without the support of the American people. Let's be very clear. If Trump wants $200 billion, that means he believes we might be in a war with Iran for a very, very long time. $200 billion is more than what we spent even at the height of the war in Iraq. It's more than we have spent altogether in Ukraine. It's an indefensible number. One of the most wasteful and unthought out budget requests ever heard in my time in the Senate. For $200 billion, we could lower healthcare premiums for tens of millions of Americans. For $200 billion, we could educate a generation and unleash the immense potential of our students. For $200 billion, we could cut hunger in this country in half or more for many years. For $200 billion, we could invest in jobs, in science, in manufacturing. We could begin fixing our power grid. But instead, the Trump administration reportedly wants $200 billion to go to war with Iran. It is unacceptable. It is ridiculous. It is beyond the pale. Such a large amount of money for a war that no one knows the goal, no one knows the conclusion, no one knows the path.
$200 billion. That's not funding a mission. That's funding a forever war. The gall demanding $200 billion from taxpayers for Trump's open-ended war in Iran. No end game, no plan, no authorization from Congress, no support from the American people because we ain't giving that kind of support. We're not doing it. That number is not routine. It's astronomical. It's outrageous. It dwarfs what we've spent on most recent conflicts combined. It means they expect years of fighting. That ain't no week of fighting. That's years of fighting. Money. $200 billion American lives lost, families grieving, while oil prices spike and inflation bites harder. Where y'all get off? $200 billion could lower healthcare premiums for tens of millions of people, educate a generation, fix our crumbling power grid, help families afford medicine and groceries instead of choosing between them and a war. But instead, they want a blank check for perpetual war. The sheer audacity of it. To ask for that much when Americans are already paying the price at the pumps in our bills and in our security. At that level, you're not just committing resources, you're committing generations to boots on the ground for a long time. Once locked in, it's nearly impossible to reverse. So the question isn't just strategic anymore. It's moral, it's economic, it's about whose future we're mortgaging. And the answer is very clear. This will never happen. Not on my watch, not without accountability. We need to end this war.
I've listened carefully to my colleagues who've come down to oppose this war powers resolution that I am bringing up right now. I've listened with an open heart because many of them I've worked with on Middle East issues assiduously to bring about peace in that region. I share many of the beliefs that were expressed of the danger of Iran and their proxies, of the chaos and the harm and the lives they've taken, the instability in that region. We have worked side by side on bipartisan delegations, bipartisan work, as the Senate should function to deal with the challenges in the threat matrix that affect the United States as well as our allies. But here's the issue. We are bringing a war powers resolution to the floor to bring this to a vote and to a debate. My colleagues do not want a debate on this issue. Nothing has been scheduled. No floor debates, no hearings, no oversight, no checks and balances. This resolution seemed to almost offend my friend and chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, that how dare we bring this to the floor? Well, we have the power to bring such resolutions to the floor because of the incredible sensitivity to the idea of war powers. The idea that the power to go to war, unlike in times of despots and presidents in the United States of America, the power to go to war does not lie with one person, the President of the United States. Now, at first, there were some people trying to deny on the other side that this was a war, but tonight they showed it clear. Multiple people talked about us being at war. We, as a nation, are at war. The largest military engagement we have had since the war in Iraq. And in this war, in barely over 2 weeks, thousands of people have died. In this war, in barely 2 weeks, 200 Americans have been injured. In this war, 13 Americans have paid the ultimate price for a war that we have gone into on the decision made by one man. And the American people at large are paying costs in the billions of dollars a week. They're seeing prices at the pump, energy, consumer goods skyrocketing on top of already this president cutting their health care, cutting their food programs, cutting their veteran services. We are at war, and Americans are paying the price, and our servicemen, too many, have paid the ultimate price. And what is our constitutional obligation when the nation is making billions of dollars of expense? What is our constitutional obligation when lives are being lost every single day? What is our obligations when our brave military men and women carrying out their missions, some of them not coming home? Well, the Constitution is clear on this. There is no debate even possible. Constitution says that the war power belongs to Congress. And so I know the noble issues and ambitions of my colleagues that they mention, noble ideals like not letting Iran have a nuclear weapon, noble statements that they're making about trying to stop evil, those are important. That is a debate we should be having, but we're not having it. It seems that my Republican colleagues, all they want to do is to try to pretend that this is business as usual, to try to ignore or even cover up all that's going on, because as my colleague who just spoke on the floor said to a bunch of us today, I do not want open hearings. I do not want executive people of the administration like the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense to have to answer questions in open hearings. They want to circumvent the Constitution. They want to go around public oversight. They want to avoid the glare, the questions of the American people. Woe to a nation, our founding fathers believed, woe to a nation that makes it so easy to go to war. They developed this government with a check and a balance. They developed this government with oversight. They developed this government with a dispersal of powers so that we could have an enduring democratic republic. But what the Republicans are saying is they want none of that. None of our constitutional obligations, no checks and balances, no oversight, no hearings, no accountability. We want to rush to war, spending billions of taxpayer dollars, costing American lives, and costing our constitutional fidelity.
Thousands dead in weeks. 13 Americans killed, over 200 injured, visible wounds, invisible scars. Billions spent every week, 11 billion in the first 6 days alone, heading towards 200 billion if this drags on. That's not just numbers. That's American blood and taxpayer dollars pouring out for a war one man started, without Congress declaring it, without debate, without hearings, without accountability. We swore an oath to the Constitution, not to a president, not to a party. The founders gave war powers to Congress for a reason, to stop reckless, endless wars like this. But Republicans block every vote, dodge every question. That's why they need to be voted out of office. And they refuse open hearings. They want business as usual while our troops die, our families die, price skyrockets, oil skyrockets, families pay more at the pump and the grocery stores, and veterans beg us to remember the true cost. This ain't noble defense against Iran's threats. It's a war of choice, expanded to 11 countries, mistakes hitting schools and civilians, no clear end game, and Congress silent, Republicans silent, feckless, letting executive power run unchecked, risking more lives, more chaos, more attacks on our allies. The frustration boils down to this, and I understand Cory Booker's frustration. Why won't the Senate deliver it? Why won't we demand answers from the administration on why we're here, what the plan is? How do we get out of it? Americans deserve that. Our service members deserve that. The Constitution demands that. That vote failed, but the fight does not end. We'll bring these resolutions again and again. I'm sure they will until Congress does its job. Checks and balances, oversight, accountability, because this is not about left or right. It's about right and wrong.